Hey everybody, welcome back to Extreme Weather Zone. In this video, we'll be looking at a multi-day severe weather outbreak that's starting right now. We're seeing another explosion of severe weather across the central US, and this one could actually last for several weeks. So, right now, there's a lot of thunderstorms kind of exploding, but especially across western Kansas. This is where we're going to have a damaging wind event this evening, kind of over central Kansas. You also have some thunderstorms in northern Kansas and Nebraska, but especially over Kansas, where we have a moderate risk of severe weather. This is a 4 out of 5 moderate risk over Dodge City, Great Bend, Pratt, Salina, and Hutchinson in Kansas, and this is for really not much of a tornado event, but this is a damaging wind event. The severe wind, there is a 45% chance of hurricane force wind gusts. These are wind gusts of 75 to 100 miles an hour that they're anticipating, and also very large hail. Funny enough, the CSU kind of experimental forecast model doesn't really show much of anything for the hail or the wind. Nothing even significant at all. That's kind of unusual, and that's for their day one outlook. And then tomorrow we do have some severe weather up further a little bit in Nebraska and Kansas, and also near Chicago. But this one doesn't look impressive at all. We have a 2% chance of tornadoes, a kind of a 15% chance of wind. There could be some severe storms in kind of southern Nebraska, and also some hail, even in eastern Colorado, and that would be Monday evening into Monday night, potentially. The CSU model isn't really excited about that one either, but the biggest worst day looks to be Tuesday, where we already have an enhanced risk, and this is probably going to go up. We could at least see a moderate risk, and there are models showing that this one looks really bad, and it's a really dynamic system, and it looks very bad. For this goes all the way from eastern Kansas up through Iowa, Missouri, even Wisconsin, and in this area I think it looks the worst. Really, really bad for Tuesday, and that's the day 3, and this is a 30% chance of severe weather. But the CSU model shows a 69% chance of severe weather over eastern Iowa, southern Wisconsin, and northwestern Illinois. And this looks really bad. This is a 69% significant chance. This would equate to a high risk. Now, this is just an experimental kind of model, but this seems to be pretty accurate with some of these severe weather outbreaks. So this is not looking good. And then this continues all the way into Wednesday. Just, the SPC has a slight risk for that, but the CSU model is also showing severe weather there, all the way from Oklahoma all the way up into Indiana. And then another slight risk from the SPC for day 5, for Thursday. And this is also the CSU model showing a slight risk. But then, guess what? This actually continues. The SPC doesn't have anything out this far, but the CSU model is showing more severe weather day 6, day 7, and day 8. Still severe weather going on. And this is the CFS week 1 accumulated supercell composite parameter. There's people looking at this. This kind of shows a lot of severe weather they're expecting over this week, from northern Texas all the way across the central plains into the Midwest, and also a little bit over Florida, but especially in the central U.S. it looks very active and very wild this week. And then it continues, possibly the same, or even worse, possibly, for week 2. This goes from the 26th of May all the way to June 1st. And then it continues even more, going all the way from the central plains, from like eastern Colorado, Oklahoma, all the way over into possibly the Carolinas. That's a pretty significant looking event right there. And so there's going to be severe weather for a long time. it appears. And also that there's some extreme heat also at the same time in Texas. You have temperatures maybe 105 degrees in West Texas today, and then high temperatures probably around 100 to 105 in western Texas, and temperatures in the 80s to 90s across the rest of Texas, even going into Oklahoma. So that's another interesting thing. You have, those really warm temperatures, which you have warm, moist air that will help generate some really big thunderstorms. But here's a look at the severe weather just going to be unfolding over the next few hours. And you have this kind of a couple of severe thunderstorms in northern Kansas. This actually is generating, I think, a couple of tornadoes, but this is this line of storms that's going to really explode over the next couple hours, and there's going to be significant wind gusts with this. In central Kansas, possibly, they're saying 75 to 100 miles an hour, and I do think that's going to happen. And it's definitely looking pretty significant over the next few hours before it probably tones down. And then, this is a zoomed out look at the wind gusts. This is kind of showing some really strong wind gusts over probably 80 to 85 miles an hour on this model. And also, the helicity tracks kind of shows that there could be some spin up tornadoes with this, possibly, and hail. There's going to be hail, just kind of supercell thunderstorms, kind of embedded with the main line of storms. But this is what we're looking at right now, pretty much over Dodge City. You have north of Dodge City, they're expecting possibly 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts in some of these storms. And then you go, this would be at 7 p.m. Central Time, wind gusts of 75 to even 90 miles an hour in some places, even localized amounts, almost to 100 miles an hour here. So that's definitely a big line of storms. And then you have some really intense wind gusts, still probably 90 to 100 miles an hour. And this wind gust forecast, I've looked at this before, and it is pretty accurate for forecasting those wind gusts. It's a high resolution model using the HRRR, and yeah, there's still these wind gusts continuing at 9 p.m. And then finally by 10 p.m. you still have wind gusts of 80 to 90 miles an hour in a lot of these places. But before, finally, once it gets into eastern Kansas towards Kansas City, some of those gusts are a bit lower, possibly, but still almost hurricane force wind gusts still at 11 p.m. And then finally by midnight, most of the storms are actually out of the state. This is a sounding that kind of shows what things look like, and it does show tornadoes possible, but really those dew points are pretty high in the mid 60s, and so you could have some tornadoes, but it's really hail and really strong winds, and the downdraft cape is pretty high, so you can have some of these really strong kind of outflow winds from the storms, all that stuff, and you do have some shearing, but it is more of a line of storms, so not so much of a tornado event, but there will be some tornadoes possible too. So that was day one. This is day two. Storms kind of along that southern Nebraska, northern Kansas, eastern Colorado kind of area, and it really starts like further off to the west in eastern Colorado, basically Monday evening, and then it continues Monday night, and you have some of these storms just kind of going eastward. This isn't a really big severe weather event. The supercell composite for really this entire event, you do have some higher supercell composite to the south of where these big storms are today, but then these storms are to the north of where all of the supercell composite parameter is, and probably most of the instability. Because then at night it is capped, so that could really prevent some of these storms. There's not as much instability with all this as what it looks like on some of the other days, but it does show this is just kind of updraft helicity tracks going through Kansas tonight, and then you do have some significant tracks through Monday night across eastern northeastern Colorado and far northern Kansas. We'll have to see what happens with that, but probably hail and some tornadoes would be possible. In terms of wind gusts, there could be some intense winds. Let's see, this shows, this isn't actually showing super strong damaging winds at that point. So, we'll see what happens there. It's not a high-end severe weather event, and this is showing a marginal tornado probability, but there's capping, and it kind of, and this is kind of later at night, but this is definitely not the big day, which is actually Tuesday is the big day for severe weather, and this is a really dynamic system. Actually, this is kind of a look at the, how dynamic some of these storms are. Because, like, at first, it's not really dynamic, like, but then once we get to Tuesday, this is where you have a big low pressure system. You have this really dynamic pattern, and this is kind of the worst area for severe weather, possibly around that low pressure system. You have all this stuff kind of lining up. It looks pretty bad for what's going to be happening on Tuesday. This is not good because you have a strong low pressure system. It's like 980 something millibars, and then you have all these storms just to the east of that low pressure system. This is, probably one of the more scary looking storm setups that you could see with this, because you're going to have kind of a linear element to this, so that would bring just strong winds, hail, all that stuff. But then near that low pressure system, you can have like a lot of tornadoes. You probably will have a lot of tornadoes in this area, so it's going to be a wind event, but also a tornado event. So this could be a tornado outbreak across Iowa, Wisconsin, all these places. That could be possible, especially Tuesday evening. This is at kind of like 7 p.m. Yeah, you have all these storms around that low pressure system. There's going to be a lot of rotation there for tornadoes to be possible. And so this is just the STP, the significant tornado parameter, and this is crazy. Like all the way up to a 15. That's not good. This could be definitely a tornado outbreak. I think would be possible in this area if everything lines up. And there are updraft helicity tracks that are shorter, so you could have spin up tornadoes, but this is still like 50 to 60 hours out. So this is definitely further out. So we'll have to see what the SPC says, kind of tomorrow, if they add a moderate risk, which they could. And this is a sounding showing PDS tornadoes. And look at this. These are dew points in the 70s all the way up into like Iowa. That's pretty interesting to have that. And this is kind of showing that, because you have all this really extremely moist air just surging out ahead of that low pressure system, because it's so dynamic. You have, it's pulling extreme amounts of that moisture far to the north, and you have dew points in the 70s even into Wisconsin. That's crazy. And so definitely could be a very bad thing. There is some it does, it's partially capped, but then it does kind of uncap in Iowa. There's, this specific area where you could see some, intense severe weather, some, strong storms, possible tornadoes. And this is really showing that that PDS tornado soundings are possible there. And there's a 71% chance of a tornado. That's what it's thinking. And an 83% chance of significant hail, anywhere from 2 to 4.5 inches. And there's a lot of CAPE with this. So a lot of the instability, but the EHI is crazy also. It's a 5 to a 7. And you do have, so this is definitely pretty bad. And having that extreme amount of moisture there, that's not good. And this is kind of another sounding in a similar area. Still a lot of CAPE, and this sounding is favorable for PDS tornadoes. So that's not good. And so I think Tuesday will be a very concerning for people that are in like Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois, and even Missouri with that. And so that system is pretty dynamic, but then remember that severe weather continues again, and so there's all these, storms that can create a lot of severe weather. But this is kind of another look at Tuesday, and yeah, you have that. This is like pretty intense looking for northeastern Iowa and southwestern Wisconsin. I think is where you could have some of the worst severe weather on Tuesday, kind of probably like 3 p.m. or so, a bit further away, probably from, in the afternoon through the evening, especially where it gets the worst, and then it pushes off overnight. But there's going to be severe weather for a while, because we have this big system, even on the Euro, showing this huge system going through, and further south it looks like a line, but closer to that low pressure system, it's not good. And then you have more severe weather on the Euro, just showing like all these thunderstorms, just every day, like thunderstorms that there's a slight potential that those could be severe at some point. And then it's showing on Monday, next Monday, the 27th, it's showing like more storms, probably severe weather there, and then going all the way from the south into the Ohio and Kentucky, and then so just definitely an active severe weather pattern. Then more storms possibly in Texas. We'll see what that does. It's like, so definitely a lot of active severe weather over the next couple weeks. Yeah, this is the GFS showing this kind of supercell composite, showing just surging through over time, and it's like, so there's a lot of potential for severe weather over the next few weeks. And so yeah, we're gonna be in a very, very interesting, very active weather pattern for a while. So thanks for watching this video. Please be sure to like it, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more severe weather updates. Extreme Weather Zone out.